So if one person can quietly derail a high-performing team, it's because the system around them stopped holding. Because teams don't collapse from chaos, they collapse from unchecked drift. So let's have a real conversation what it's like for leaders dealing with difficult people that are starting to drift. So I'm Brenda Neckvatal, and I help the strongest leaders deal with the messiest people. And most leaders believe high performing teams are fragile. And they're fragile because workload or pressure or burnout suddenly starts to emerge. But honestly, that's not what breaks them. High performing teams are really hardy individuals. They are not afraid to go through all of the challenges that they are faced. But what breaks them is one unchecked pattern that everyone sees, but no one feels safe naming. And here's how it starts. You've got a solid team. You have strong results, great rhythm. People trust each other. Then suddenly something happens where one person makes a shift. Not dramatically, they don't do it loudly, but just enough to be noticed. Right? They stop collaborating and they start correcting. They question decisions after meetings instead of during them. They create side conversations that never quite reach the table. And there's nothing that looks wrong on paper, but everybody notices that the energy has changed. And high performers, look, they feel energy changes and they feel them immediately. Highly instinctive people. And this is where leaders actually start to make their first mistake. They assume that maturity will self correct the issue, they assume performance will buy goodwill. And they assume addressing it would actually be making something out of nothing. So what do? They wait. And waiting teaches the wrong lesson because that one person isn't confused. They're calibrating. They're watching how much space they're allowed to take. They're measuring how firm leadership actually is. And they're learning that what happens when they subtly pull against the current. And when nothing happens, guess what? That behavior starts to settle in. Now, the damage spreads not outward, but downward. So, high performance, they stop speaking up, not because they don't care, because they don't want to deal with that friction. They only want to focus in on what they're focusing on. They start thinking that it's not worth the pushback. I'll just do my job. Leadership must see this. They've got this. I trust it, right? And here's the problem. When high performers go quiet, leaders mistake it for stability. It's not. It's containment. And containment always leaks. So meetings, they start to get quieter. Decisions start getting slower and innovation drops. When you see this, trust this. All the while, results may start looking fine for now. But that's why it's so dangerous because leaders are trained to respond to outcomes, not undercurrents. So, meanwhile, that one person starts to gain influence and not in a positive way, not because they're strong, but because the absence of correction has now created the vacuum. People start adjusting around them. They start avoiding them. They work around them. They're lowering standards in order to keep the peace. And now the team isn't high performing anymore. It's high functioning, but doing it under tension. And that tension starts to show up as increased defensiveness, quiet resentment, reduced ownership, and emotional fatigue. And the best people, they always feel it first. Always. And they ask themselves an extremely brutal question. Is this the place I want to give my best self to? This is the moment leaders always regret later. And it seems to just kind of come up as a surprise sometimes. Because once trust starts to crack, it doesn't shatter loudly, it splinters. But splinters are harder to fix than actual cracks and breaks. So let's talk about why one person can have this much impact. And it's not because that they're powerful. It's because teams are social systems. People watch what's tolerated and they mirror what's rewarded. They withdraw when fairness feels inconsistent. So when one person operates under a different set of rules, and even the unspoken ones, the system starts to destabilize. Not instantly, but it happens gradually. And it's one of those things that as a leader, you see it, you feel it, you know it, but you just can't put your finger on it yet. It's almost like a hidden agenda. But when leaders will finally act, the team doesn't feel relieved. They actually feel confused. Like, why suddenly are you doing this now when you should have seen it earlier? It's like, why are you suddenly doing this? And like, what has changed? Because the behavior actually hasn't changed, but the tolerance to it has. That is the gap that erodes trust in leadership's judgment. Now, the leader is dealing with the pushback from the individual, the skepticism from the team, and their own individual frustration for not acting sooner. And all of this was preventable, not with force, not with punishment, but with really early clarity. Speak it early and speak it often. So, high performing teams, they don't need heavy leadership. That's not how they operate, but they do need consistent leadership. They need leaders who address small misalignments before they become massive social system fractures. And that doesn't mean confronting every annoyance. It means recognizing patterns early and then naming them cleanly. So most leaders, they don't struggle with courage, they struggle with language. They know something's off. They just don't know how to address it without escalating. Or sometimes they may not even necessarily see it as a problem until all of a sudden it's glaring them in the face. So what happens is that they say nothing. And unfortunately, silence always sides with the problem. This is why guessing your way through people issues is really dangerous. Because once a team starts self protecting, you're no longer leading culture. You're now managing damage. But this is exactly why I built my app. It's not theory. It's not a bunch of HR jargon. I promise you, I can't stand that stuff. It's not even personality typing. It is real time leadership guidance for moments like this. So when one person is shifting the room, the team feels different, but can't articulate it or can't articulate why you feel the tension. But they don't want to overreact because you need to address behavior without blowing up trust. Now, this app helps you slow the moment down, helps you identify what you're seeing, and choose a response that protects the team, not just the individual. Because high performing teams, they don't break because leaders are bad. They break because leaders hesitate at the wrong moment. And hesitation always, always, always costs more later. So let's have a real conversation about what it's like for leaders dealing with difficult people. You don't need them to wait until the team breaks. You don't need to guess. You don't even need to clean up a mess that could have been prevented. The link to the app is below. And the strong leadership isn't about controlling people. It's about protecting the system before one person quietly tears it apart.